everyone to this episode of the Women in Technology Spotlight. Today I have with me Wuraola. She is a data scientist and a researcher at the Imperial College in London. She's also a LinkedIn learning instructor where she talks about data science and data intelligence. And she has a YouTube channel where she talks about data science in Yoruba, which I find especially cool. Welcome.
Hi, Iron here.
Great to have you here on this podcast episode, and I'd just like to kick it off with a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are and what you enjoy doing.
Okay, my name is Wuraola Oyewusi. I'm the last in a family of 5, so I have 4 siblings, and I'm from Nigeria. I'm particularly from Ogbomoso in Oyo State, Nigeria. I currently live in London. I moved more than a year ago. I moved on the global talent visa. My hobbies, I like great conversations. So I have quite a number of friends, and then we talk, and then sometimes I sing off key and dance off key. Yeah, sometimes I do that. What else do I like? I'm probably that friend. I speak Yoruba like often. Uh, I speak Yoruba often, and we'll definitely talk more about my work. But maybe for the purpose of this, I began my career as a clinical pharmacist. So I didn't start my career in tech.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be something interesting we'll talk about later
It
in the
is
podcast.
absolutely interesting to me because I've seen a very interesting trend when talking to women on this podcast. A lot of women are career switchers. So it's not just you. So a lot of women started out doing something else and then they switched into tech. And I recently talked to another young Nigerian woman. She also started out in the healthcare sector and then transitioned into data science, which is an interesting trend. And also brings me to what you do at work. You are a data scientist and a researcher. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'm a data scientist on a research team. Our current work is focused on using different natural language processing technique. Natural language processing is a sub-team of artificial intelligence that deals with unstructured data, and unstructured data includes text. It includes speech and things like that. But my work is majorly focused on text. So the interesting thing about that is that if you're transitioning career and you wonder how it all converges, I work with clinical related data. So this time around, it's not just a data scientist; it's a pharmacist that actually understand that data.
Okay.
So yeah, I just thought that I should bring that in. So yeah, so we are our work involves applying different techniques, summarization, some anyhow. Okay, I'm not supposed to use a lot of acronyms, but maybe some named entity recognition. There's this huge body of scientific publication, and we're trying to make sense of it. I think that's like an overview of what I do.
That sounds really interesting, and then I love that you can bring in the expertise you gained as a pharmaceutical in the pharmaceutical field into the work you're doing now. So this is also something that's very important, that we have people who have different areas of knowledge and they come into tech and kind of augment the tech field, because I feel that tech is very interesting. I've always loved tech, but we need more people who have a broader view to make it, work for society. So, and you said you work with natural language processing, and that's so interesting also because currently there is a big hype around this topic, obviously with ChatGPT and all these things. It has become something that more people are familiar with, I think. Do you have any thoughts on this development?
No, well, Chat GPT is only one out of the series of many large language models that are based on the transformer algorithm. This hype, the discussion is not new. if this is what you do. But I understand the frenzy now that this
Mhm.
seem open to quite a number of people. But I'm going to say it's not magic. The simplest way to explain that and how it works, there's a large body of text.
Mhm.
ChatGPT was trained on a lot of internet text. And then the core of data science AI, which I find interesting, is that there's data, and then these algorithms have the capacity to learn pattern in this data. So it's
Mhm.
not magic. I understand that sometimes it sounds so confident, but you don't want to just take everything hook, like, and sinker. But it's amazing that people can experience some of these things. But as a professional, I'm going to say it's not magic.
Mhm.
It's
And thank you for saying that. I think that's so important for people to understand that this, because a lot of people who are not familiar with the technology, for them it seems magical that the system will, give answers and text that sounds very much like a human being. But if you understand what is behind it, and that is something I want to talk a bit about, why it is important to have a basic technical understanding and how things work in this modern world. So maybe you have some thoughts on why you think that especially younger people who are growing into this world that is fully digital, and where everything is somehow related to tech, should spend some time understanding what is behind these technologies.
Oh, well, as with every other type of evolving technology, it's already in your lives. There's artificial intelligence and now things are recommended to you. If you're probably watching this video, the algorithm will probably bring similar talk shows to you. If there's an advert, it will probably try to bring similar adverts to you. If you're using translators on your phone, that's AI. It's not magical. It's already in your life. I try to emphasize on that a lot so that people don't think that this is dystopian. And like I
Yeah.
said, machine is not like as smart as people,
Mhm.
quite, by
Yes,
the,
absolutely. Mhm.
yeah,
I
it's
think we
not
need to demystify, the whole thing. I think this is what it's
exactly.
about.
It's,
So, yeah, please go ahead.
no, it's okay. I
Yeah.
can go there.
So what I would like to know is how did you transition? How did you make that transition, and why did you make that transition from the pharmaceutical field into data science? What interested you about the whole topic?
Okay, I think the opening line that I say every time I get asked this question a lot is that I got into all this by chance. I wrote my first line of code at 26. So how I was, how I was raised, we were encouraged to try things, but I didn't just think tech was my thing. In
Mhm.
fact, how I got into tech and I started considering this during my studies here. We have those NYS in Nigeria, or generally, I used to read a lot of job postings. I just
Mhm.
used to read, I just be on websites looking at the skills out there. And then I saw something about data analyst and I read everything that that person was supposed to do. And I said, no, I do this. I do
Mhm.
this as a pharmacist. Like as a pharmacist, I've been forecasting. I've been, you've been predicting like, oh, the weather is changing. We were changing
Mhm.
our practices. I've been looking at data for insights. It has different names, but I said I can do this, except I think one of the requirements in that particular job posting for a data analyst was SQL. And then I decided to Google what SQL was, or some people call it SQL. And then I said, oh, there's data somewhere, and this is how they get it out. I said, I think it makes sense. If you have
Mhm.
data somewhere, you want to get it out. And then I enrolled for an for a SQL course online. It was free. Um, why don't I remember the website? They deserve a shout out because I just and then I was learning about Select, and then I thought this was really cool. And as I was learning about it, I think an advert came up about Python and data science, and
Mhm.
then I decided to look at it, and then I said, "Oh, this is cool! Like,
Mhm.
oh, there's data. People are finding patterns. This data is big. There are these algorithms that can learn from representative data, and then you can transfer the prediction on new ones." So I was hooked, and then I bought my first specialization, and I just I did that thing that people do when they are switching careers, where you're just there for 10 hours, because I was starting from scratch. I was learning how to code. Yeah. So that was how I transitioned careers. I was still a pharmacist, so I'll see my patients and then I'll just code in my spare time. You know, the internet is wonderful.
Yes, it is. It is.
It is fascinating thing, fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. And I also find it interesting that your contact with data science was that you just randomly read some job posting.
It was because like I said, at home, my parents are not exactly like maybe many people's experiences. You are allowed to try things that you like. So I wasn't actively kept away from technology or something. You know, I had a laptop. My brother was studying computer, but I was in healthcare, so it didn't feel like a lot of our conversation would be about those things. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think what happened was something that a lot of people don't realize. All the fields in our life are somehow related to data nowadays. So everything you do, it doesn't matter really what field you're in, there is data. And everywhere we use data to create predictions, to create understanding of our customers, to create understanding of our products. So, and most people don't see that part of our life because it's a bit hidden behind the surface. But when you look closer and you have an interest in understanding how your field works, then you will understand, yeah, there's data and I can do all these interesting things with it. And that is, I think, what you found when you moved into that field.
You're right about that. And then when I taught one of the topics, I teach general topics in Yoruba language because I just happen to speak quite well. Not quite well, I speak Yoruba like well, but historically decisions have been made based on data from the previous herbalist. For example, in one of my videos, I gave an example of how families decide that this is an allergy. Maybe in Yoruba culture, they will say it's AWOL, like this family, they don't eat this. Many of those decisions are based on data. Maybe someone on the family line has had an allergic reaction to a particular meal and they've just studied the pattern. Like we think everybody born in this line. Of course, they mystify it, but many of those decisions is actually data. Like your great grandfather ate this type of yam and he died. We don't think you should eat it. It's really data. It's them finding patterns about that particular family and things like that.
That is such an interesting point of view, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but what I'm thinking about is, you know, traditional Chinese cooking and medicine also works like that. It's basic, you know, there's always this aspect of mystical and you know, it's traditional and there's all this, you know, this mystification, but what it is, it's data from history. People saw that this happened when somebody did something, ate some food, took some herbs, and they remembered this, and that's what they're using to create a medicine or a type of eating. So, and that's the same thing in Yoruba culture. Of course, you saw your ancestors did not ate something and they didn't digest it well, so you will stay away from it, right? I mean, that's so cool.
Exactly. Another interesting example of that we did in pharmacy school, there's pharmacognosy, and then you know you read about culturally that certain plants are only harvested early in the morning and not in the afternoon or evening. It's just the timing of production of certain chemicals, and then the herbalist says something like, if you don't go in the morning, if you harvest it in the afternoon, then it doesn't work. The reason it's not working is just because some elements are, you know, they're probably being broken down by the sunlight, you know. So
oh wow. This is such an interesting topic because you know what classic medicine would say if you tell them, okay, this herb has to be harvested at this time of the day or this time of the moon. So they say, oh, it's superstition, and people are so superstitious because they don't understand. But it's true actually, because as you said, it's based on data and experience.
Yeah, so, some are true. Some of them are just some are unfounded, but sometimes it's truly data.
some, of course, are superstition, but I think what we should do is we should look closely at, you know, these traditions that people and cultures bring, and then find out what is actually really important. What is superstition, instead of just discarding everything people say because it's, oh, you know, this uncultured people, they have no idea. And science and medicine is so much more sophisticated and we know everything, you know. That's what I'm trying to say, because I think there's a lot of knowledge being lost because we don't listen to people, you know.
Oh, we don't listen, and maybe a bit of culture of documentation. You know, reproducibility is a big deal. Rather
Yes.
than oral, that's where mystification loses its charm and its history. If it's mystified, people don't know
Yeah.
why they do this, and then it just dies with people.
I think that's also an interesting point, or a good point that you're making, because, you know, there is one thing is the tradition and the knowledge that is there about certain things. And then what happens is that people forget why they're doing something, you know, and then it becomes like just a rule that is based in mystery or spiritualism or whatever. And at some point, it doesn't even make any sense. Like, for example, that pork is haram in Muslim culture. There's a good scientific reason why they didn't eat pork in certain places in the world. But these reasons are no longer valid, but it doesn't matter because it has become a rule. You know what I mean? And the same thing is with some kinds of, you know, you have to do it this way or it won't work. Sometimes there is a basis to it, sometimes there isn't anymore. So yeah, but I still feel we should look more closely, especially at this traditional herbal knowledge that other cultures bring to the table. Yeah, this was an interesting segue into herbs and superstition and you know, medicine. But coming back to what you do now, I love that you teach basics in Yoruba. Tell me why you're doing this.
Well, I could find a big reason for doing it, but it's just because I can, actually. So I could, there are those big, seemingly big reasons, but it's just a convergence of some of the things I'm great at. They are just
Yeah.
simple conversations of, let me teach you about this from this perspective. I make a case that people assume, maybe because certain people don't speak English, that they are not curious about technology. That's a lie. Some of the most curious people don't even speak English. And the classes of people that watch what I teach are people who just enjoy the conversation. They speak English, but they understand. They want to hear this in Yoruba. There are those who probably don't speak English, and then they're learning about all these tools because technology is in your life. There are people who are trying to learn the language. They understand a bit of tech, and then it's just an opportunity to hear some of this perspective in Yoruba. There are people who are trying to let their kids understand that. So there are the curious, there are those who are doing it for entertainment. But to be sincere, it's just I speak Yoruba well. I'm great at tech, so why not?
Yeah, of course, why not? But what I hear is that you are trying to make this world accessible to everyone, even to
Exactly.
those. So for me, that's the underlying motivation that I'm looking for, you know? And I love that you do that, because I absolutely feel that everyone should have access to technology, especially because it has become so important in our world. And I also like, of course, I mean, it's a great opportunity to learn the language and you know, also, you know, help children, maybe especially, for example, for children of you know, Nigerians who have migrated to other countries where they're not inside that Yoruba culture anymore, to learn more of the language and things like that. So
Yeah, because
that's a great thing.
YouTube data says people are watching from about 13 countries. Some of the longest watch time are definitely outside Nigeria. Of course, I'm looking at the age group, who are the people watching the most, from all over the world, but people across all age ranges. And then people's parents, some people have a quite, like I said, not understanding English or technology does not mean people are not curious.
Yeah.
And then, people are curious. They want to know about the tools that affect their life. They want to know, for example, I've made several videos. I've made about 20 videos, maybe just 5. I've taught cybersecurity. And, even when I was home with my mom, she said, oh, maybe some of the random calls. And then she remembered that, I had mentioned in the video that were you part of a lottery? Did you call your bank? Why is someone calling you back? So it was pretty nice. And then it's unifying to Yoruba people from all over the world. Sometimes people just say hi, and I'm like, oh, cool. There are people in Benin Republic, people from Nigeria, just saying hi. And
Yeah.
because I don't like when people mystify things. I do think that there's accessibility, and then don't just I understand that some things are technical indeed, but it shouldn't be mystified, especially
Yeah.
because it's in people's life. Whether you like it or not, if you're not on Twitter, there's recommender systems at work, on your Facebook. You
Everywhere.
deserve to know how that works.
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, technology is everywhere, and there is no part of our lives anymore that is not touched in certain ways by data and tech, and it will only become more, not less. So it's important for everyone to
Exactly.
understand. So coming back to you, you studied pharmacy, and then you switched into, because you found it interesting, you switched into data science. But then you tell me you got sorry, what's it called? A grant to go to London, right?
I moved to London on the global talent visa. It's a
Oh,
visa. Yeah,
mm-hmm,
it's a visa class. It's mostly for
mm-hmm.
it's it's like a work visa that you don't require an employer kind of a thing.
Ah,
So
I see. Okay. But that's also cool, because to get that visa, I know it's not easy. So obviously you are very good at what you do. And tell me, what was it like going to London from Nigeria and starting out this career? Because I mean, you are now a teacher, researcher, you're working at a college in the UK. What's it like?
well, it's I'll say it's part of adulting. Yeah, it's part of adulting. It's nice that I'm grateful. I mean, such a big fascination of what the internet can do,
Mhm.
because some of the most fascinating thing about transitioning career is the access. I was when I newly transitioned careers, I was in awe of all the things that were just online. In fact, that was one of the reasons I started writing. I felt like I've benefited so much from the internet. And if I have new perspective, if I'm learning a technique, and if I'm learning a technique and I understand this, that I just think I should share, whether
Mhm.
anybody reads or not. So it's part of the reason I started writing. It was amazing. Coming from healthcare, access to tools and knowledge were not this open. I
Mhm.
understand. Yeah, they were not this open. If I'm buying my drug details, I have to buy that, the textbooks,
Yeah.
this is the new dosage, this is the new year. It's not like that in tech. So
Mhm.
the culture of openness is inherently beneficial. You can innovate more. I literally transitioned careers myself by learning online.
Yeah.
It's not it wasn't few courses, it was intense. I always try to say that truth. It was a bit weird because I was studying, because I was learning everything from scratch. I was learning how to program. I was learning a bit of math, not a bit, some linear algebra for machine learning, but the resources, they were just there online, of course. And then I was working. I was a pharmacist, so I could afford the courses that I needed. It's I don't have like black tax kind of a thing, so I could afford those things. But the most amazing thing is they were all online. And for
Yeah.
example, see Chat GPT coming out. It's accessible in most places in the world. So that access, it's amazing. It's the real life changing thing.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that makes tech so intriguing that you can, it's a new world, but you can access it from every corner of the world, and everyone talks to everyone, and knowledge is shared and information is shared. So yeah, obviously for some courses you will need some resources in terms of money, but the internet is it's such a vast resource of information. It's unbelievable. And this is something I think that's especially important for young people in Africa to understand, that they have access, as long as they have internet and a phone, they have access to such a wealth of information, and they have the possibility to transform, their careers and their lives.
You're right about that. I try not to deny some of the difficult realities of sometimes you want to learn these things, there's no light. I had the privilege, I could pay for those things. I had a laptop. I could pay for, maybe generator to do light. Like I said, I was already a pharmacist. I was leading a small pharmacy team by the time I transitioned careers. So I wasn't and then
Yeah.
it's I don't have a pressure to pay bills at home. So I always try to, despite the fact that I understand that I can tell people to just go online, do this. I understand that it's maybe a bit difficult for other people, but for what it's worth, it's life
Yeah.
changing. It's life changing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. Of course, the amount of work it takes to get to the place you are is and the amount of resources are different. But I think because I also grew up in Nigeria for some time, and I always go back to visit my father. I mean, it's a place where you have to work hard all the time anyway. So
Anyway.
yeah, the internet just gives you a chance to take that work and transform it into something that can change your life, I feel.
Yeah, the amazing thing about the internet, for example, when I made the videos and people were watching everywhere, for example, you and I, we've never met in person and we get to do this together. I've met several people online, people who have supported my work, people who we've become friends. I've made solid friends online. Some of my best friends, I met them on Twitter, on LinkedIn, so it's nice, it's amazing, the barriers that the access to the world, that it breaks down.
Yes, so true. I see that we're already nearing the end of the 30 minutes, because
Yeah.
that's the extent of time I may take for this podcast. And since we're already at this topic, I would like to ask you my final question, and that is, if you think about, like a young woman setting out on the path that you went on, what would you recommend to her? What would your tip be, or, what would you give her as advice?
I'm going to say the person should bet on themselves. There's no reason why you should not take that bet on yourself, why you should not try something you want to try, and that there's no big deal in failure. I understand that it can be heartbreaking, but there's no big deal in failure. For your first job, you may have to apply to up to 100 roles. That's what I recommend for people. Like, just be knocking the door and be obsessed with mastery. Despite how difficult the world is, you're, just be obsessed with mastery. Let it be known that at your craft, you are one of the best at it, and you should just own it. It's not really your fault if just own it. I understand the temptation to want to play small. I understand the temptation to, just you know I'll say of course I've mentored people, I've been many people's first managers and things like that. But I'm going to say, be great at what you do, and
Yeah.
then shamelessly share your work. You don't have to share your private life, but for some reason share your work, talk about your work, be an expert. It's important and it's life changing.
Yes, such good advice. I mean, first, believe in yourself, share your brand so people know what you're about, and don't be afraid of failure. You only fail if you stop, so if, as long as you get up again and try again, you haven't failed yet, right?
Yeah, well, sometimes you failed truly in that particular case, but at least, don't stop betting on yourself.
Yeah.
I always have that going for me. At least I'll give it a shot. And if I don't get it, it's okay. I'll
Yeah.
apply for other things.
Something else. Thank you so much for your story and your wisdom. It was great having you on the podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Have a great day.
You too.